Hello everyone, I'm Elissa with the City Museum and I'm here today to show you how to make a cranky. Now if you haven't already watched Beth's video about crankies, you may want to check it out first because she provides a wonderful overview of the history of crankies and how they work. You can find Beth's video on our YouTube channel and also on our Facebook page. So as Beth mentions in her video, a cranky is made up of three specific parts: a box, a cranking mechanism, and a panorama. The box serves as the frame for the panorama. The panorama, which is the artwork, moves across the box frame via a cranking mechanism, which causes the panorama to roll and unroll. Now you can make a cranky from a variety of different types of materials. Many cranky boxes are made from wood and they can be very ornate, or they can be quite simple in design, like this tissue box. Some crankies incorporate complicated cranking mechanisms, while others are very simple. And the panorama itself can be created from most any art supplies, just as long as your finished artwork can be rolled and unrolled easily. So maybe you already have an idea for what materials you plan to use when you make your cranky. That's great. If you're not quite sure what materials to use, no problem. You can use our cranky kit to create a basic cranky like this one. Just give us a call at the City Museum to request a kit, and you will receive nearly everything you need to make a cranky. So let's take a look at what's included inside this kit. So I've unpacked the cranky kit to show you what's inside. There will be a box, all the parts you will need to create your cranking mechanism, a base, paper rollers, and 2 spindles. There's also a long strip of paper for creating your panorama and 2 paper guides. And because we've been focusing on the theme of Northern Lights, we included a postcard of the Northern Lights created by Mark Kelly. Before I can put all these pieces together to create my cranky, I need to create the panorama. So I'm going to go gather all my art materials, and then I'll be back to show you how to create a crayon resist painting of the Northern Lights. Now that I've gathered all of my art supplies, I'm going to show you how to create a crayon resist panoramic painting of the Northern Lights. First, I'm going to draw the Northern Lights using crayons, and then I'm going to paint over it with black watercolor paint. For inspiration, I'm going to use Mark Kelly's postcard that we've included in your kit. To start, you will need to find your roll of paper. You may notice that the paper is longer than you need for your artwork, and if so, that's no problem, just cut it later. So I've chosen 2 colored green crayons that are close to what I'm looking at in this image to capture the color. Now to get the shape of movement across my page, I'm going to start not right at the end because we're going to be taping that to our gear. I'm going to start a little ways in. Now pressing hard, I'm going to start with the darker color. I'm going to make movements while I'm creating these kind of arches across the long paper like this, just to get that sense of movement. And like sometimes they're called fences, arches. And I am pressing hard. Sometimes when you press this hard, your crayon breaks, and that's okay. No big deal, but definitely want to press hard enough, because if you don't press hard enough, when you go to add your paint in this next step, all of this will be covered and you won't see the lights. I'm going to take this next color just to add some different highlights in there, and I might try to kind of just add it in some of those parts to capture that kind of essence of glowing. So I might do it kind of around the arches. Maybe I'll even pull this edge down like a little to capture kind of that little corner. It's kind of like purposeful scribbling is what you're doing here. And you may capture it in a different way, and that's fine. Whatever it feels like and looks like to you, that sense of Northern Lights. So I'm going to cover my whole sheet all the way over, and then we'll come back to the next part. Now that I've drawn the lights with my crayon, it's time for the resist part. This is the fun part. You're going to need some black watercolor paint, and I'm using artist quality paint. It's just a little darker, but you can also use Crayola or any other type of watercolor paint. You just want to make sure you test it out first on a small spot, like I did here in the corner, to make sure that it's not going to cover up the crayon. Now check out how this looks when you add the paint. So it's a night sky, and I'm going to add in that dark sky, just my black paint, and you'll notice as I paint over the crayon, it resists the paint, and so that crayon shows through as the northern lights. And as you keep painting all the way across, you might go back and forth to fill in those white spots. And once you have completely painted in your sky, there's one final step. And I'll show that to you now. So the final step is to add in some trees and maybe even some mountains to give it more dimension. For this, you are going to need maybe two more brushes that you can create a tree with. I have a flat wide brush and a pointy brush. I have black tempera paint or acrylic paint, so this is going to be much darker. And I also have an old toothbrush and white paint with some clean water for adding stars at the very end. So to create trees, you want to dip your brush, probably the flat one, into the paint. Make sure it's not too goopy. And starting at the bottom, you can draw, these are going to be in silhouette. They'll look kind of like, you know, shadows, like a tree at night. And I'm just making the trunks of the trees to start with, and overlapping some of the northern lights there at different heights too. And I'm going to use that same brush to kind of splotch in the branches of the trees. And that's just moving my brush in different directions to get the angles. And you might consider capturing also that sense of winter by adding some snow-capped mountains. So I'm going to draw just some shapes of mountains through here. And I can use the white later to add some highlights to represent snow. So I'm going to continue on along the whole length of my panorama, adding these trees and mountains. And then we'll come back and do the final step. Now we're going to add the final touches of stars and a little bit of snow. This is the fun part. With your toothbrush, dip it into your water, shake off some of that water. We're going to want to get the white paint, the texture enough so that it's not too wet and not too dry, so you can splatter it. It's a little wet. So I'm going to use my thumb or my forefinger. I guess my pointy finger works best. And I'm just going to rub it against the tip of the brush to kind of splatter some stars across the sky. And if it gets on the mountain and you don't like that, you can just go back over that with your paintbrush, which I think I might do. So the mountains really stand out and they don't get mixed up with the sky. Okay, and then using that fine-tipped paintbrush, I'm going to take a little bit of the thicker white paint, and I might just go to the very tips of some of those mountain tops and add a little white to represent the snow. So once your panorama is complete, it's time to put your cranky together. But first, you may want to take your box and add some detail to it by painting it. To prepare it for painting, you're going to want to fold in all of the flaps here on each side and tape them, leaving the front flaps open. And then perhaps you might want to even change the shape of your window. So this is the way the one we created looks after we've painted it and taped the flaps down. So the first thing I would do is take your two paper guides and stick them into the holes in the front of your gear mechanism. And you notice you also have the two paper rolls. And the next thing you're going to want to do is tape one end of your panorama to the paper roll, making sure that the top of your panorama is at the top of the paper roll. I'm going to go ahead and tape one end now. Now I'm going to insert one of the spindles through the hole in that roll into the base. You want to make sure that your artwork, your panorama, is in front of the two paper guides. And then I'm going to spin most of it with the cranky mechanism onto this paper roll. That might take a moment depending on how long your panorama is. Once I get almost to the end, I'm going to take that end, hold on to that roll, and slide it into my box. And then I'm going to carefully pull the other end of my paper out the other side of the box and tape it onto the other paper roll. And then I will roll that up, set it on the base, take the last spindle, insert it through the hole and into the base hole. And that's how you put together your cranky.
Aurora Borealis by Carol Berry Davis. Sharp rising from horizons wide, great brilliant searchlights dart and glide across the jeweled midnight dome to meet and cross and travel home. There through the mountain gap is seen a field of glowing, living green that smolders, dims, rekindles, burns where homeland phosphorescent yearns. On tiptoe, instinct tries to steal a touch. Is that rich beauty real? Its sibilating whispers make the restless huskies whine and shake. There creeps a stain of bright blood red high up the sky to reach the spread of yellow halo where a star alights a slender sickle scar. But Northmen watch in wonder still through deepening night along the hill, and reverent asked, so what are men that thou shouldst stir their souls again?